I know the Celtics lost by 27 against the Rockets, but this was their worst loss of the season. Nevertheless, welcome into your Celtic source here on this gloomy Monday evening as the Celtics fall to the Utah Jazz 105-103 in just an absolute catastrophe in terms of shooting. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Jaylen Brown, he had a nice game overall to sort of, come away with a couple positives here. That's multiple games now in the early part of the season where Jaylen Brown has been pretty efficient. Not as efficient tonight for sure, but he still comes away with 36 points in 38 minutes. Not enough assists from him, only 4 assists, just 2 rebounds, so just not doing his part on the rebounding. And to be honest, this was just a terrible performance from almost everyone on the Celtics roster. And before I get into just the shooting numbers, I want to give credit to the Utah Jazz, right? Specifically, Keontae George. Keontae George had a terrific game. I think it's only his third year in the league, but 9 of 16 from the field. Where did he go? 2 of 5 from 3, but overall 56% on field goals, 31 points in 38 minutes, and he led this team to a victory and a 3-4 start on this team on the start of the season. Well beyond what I think were probably expectations. And I don't know the teams that the Jazz were playing. I know they played, a couple good teams in there at some point. But we are expecting the Jazz to be one of the worst teams in the league. And they tonight just beat up on a Celtics team that was well rested with a day off after that Rockets game where the starters didn't play much in the fourth quarter, given the blowout status of that game. And so you thought the Celtics would be all rested up. And, the game started like that. Celtics looked like they were going to be on fire through most of the game. And then just clink after clink off the rim, the Celtics continued to jack up threes like we've seen in the past. And what started as a great lead and an early deficit for the Utah Jazz turned into I'm not going to say collapse, because after that first and second quarters from the Celtics, there was no point. There was no point. There was no playmaking. There was no shooting. There was nothing from the Celtics, and a 10-point lead at half is not a collapse. That's still a close game and a neck and neck game at 10 points, and the Celtics just fell apart. Their overall shooting numbers on the night, they finished, I think it was 11 for 51 from 3. Just unbelievable. The fact that they took 51 threes and made just 11 of them. The thought to just keep, throwing them up when nobody can make a shot was just, extremely frustrating to watch. And, Jaylen Brown did his part down the stretch. He got a couple of, easy points in the paint. Well, I wouldn't say easy. They were tough shots, but he found a way to get into the paint and try and make an impact on the game late. And they actually, it was like a 9-point game with like 2 minutes left, and the Celtics are able to get it back and, take the lead and exchange actually free throws with the Jazz, making, they would go back and forth for about a minute or so of the Jazz taking a lead on a free throw, and then the Celtics would take a lead on the free throw. And then you know, it comes down to the fact that there's, 22 seconds left or something, and Keontae George, who had been cooking all night, gets to his spot and makes a fantastic, I think it was driving layup, to go ahead with zero point 0.6 seconds. And 0.6 seconds is not a game over by any means. I think you need 0.3 seconds to catch and shoot. And so, that's plenty of time to come around a screen and take a three if you're a Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, or Derek White, even a Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown just commits an awful, away from the play, push off to try and get open. And because the ball had not been inbounded yet, not only is it a turnover, or I guess it is a turnover, the ball was not in the air, so it's not free throws, but a turnover with 0.6 seconds left. Yeah, that's game over. So just a frustrating way to cap off a already extremely disappointing result. I thought after the games against the 76ers, the Cavs, who else did they win in there? The Pelicans, that this season was starting to turn around. And we came in to the Rockets game knowing that we'd already won the two previous games against pretty, solid teams and definitely playoff contenders in the 76ers and Cavs. And we were okay with going 2-3 in that stretch. And we thought that, we'd get right back to work against the Utah Jazz and then the Wizards, which is the next game. And, I thought Drew Carter had a great line on the broadcast where he said, your margin of error is sitting on the bench. And by that he meant Jason Tatum. And, he's absolutely right. This team has no margin of error. There is nothing. If something goes wrong, this team will lose. And, it happened to be in this game one of the biggest, factors in an NBA game, which is shooting variance and shooting percentages. So, it makes sense that they lost this game. But it could have been just as little as, a couple more rebounds or a couple turnovers could have cost this game as well. And I'm not saying it would cost the game against the Jazz, but, you already have 30-plus losses that are like that Rockets team that you play where unless everything goes absolutely perfect, you're probably not going to win that game. And so these little games that we keep harping on just got to take care of your, bad opponents. And so, I'm not sure what else there is to talk about in this game. I will go into a couple player performances, overall performances, or not overall individual performances. But in terms of overall instant reaction takeaways, just a up and down start to this season, a season that, I think is going to stay like that through most of the season. And if you are suffering these losses against these inferior opponents, you're going to find it hard to break 40 wins in this extremely loaded league. But we'll go into some individual performances. We already talked a little bit about Jaylen Brown at the start of the show. He is definitely, this was not a great game for him in terms of efficiency and, playmaking standards. Like he goes 0 of 9 from 3. Just brutal. But, I do like the fact that Jaylen Brown is taking it upon himself to be that main, ball handler and scorer. Just because, that was Jason Tatum last year, and the Celtics are trying to play really the same type of offense, but with just substituting Jaylen Brown into that role of Jason Tatum and sliding everyone else down. And so it's great to see Jaylen Brown getting up the getting up the shots. And, eventually, I'm not saying that he will always shoot a great game. There are going to be ups and downs throughout the season, but I think more often than not, you can count on a pretty solid game from Jaylen Brown. This is, I think, an exception. And so if you're getting that from Jaylen Brown, you're just waiting for a Derek White, a Peyton Pritchard, and Anthony Simons just to make one or two more threes in a game like this, and you're winning the game. Derek White, he knocked down, give him credit, in the fourth quarter, right? He's always known for his clutch fourth quarters, and give him credit, he knocked down two big threes in the fourth quarter to, close that gap on the Jazz's lead before the free throw exchange. But again, 3 of 8 in this game. It's getting better for sure, but it's still not great. Josh Minot 0 of 2, Peyton Pritchard 4 of 11. That's acceptable percentage, but Peyton Pritchard's been a 40-point shooter his entire life, and so I'm not sure what went on there. Sam Hauser 1 of 8 from this game. Sam Hauser's been our best shooter, on the team to start the season. What went wrong there? I think it was just contagious for everyone. Like, nobody could make any shot. 5 of 13 from Simons. By the way, in a game where Simons is, Simons cannot take 13 threes a game. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, yes, understandably, when you're playing 35, 40 minutes a night and you're starting, but Simons coming off the bench and shooting 13 threes and really doing nothing else besides just scoring, I don't want to see that again. I want to see Anthony Simons get other guys involved, get his assists up, and make plays for others, because you really need some sort of production to just help out the starters, especially when Derek White, as we've talked about before, has, one or two, the other team's 1 or 2 best defenders on him at all times. And yeah, it's taking him forever, I agree, to get into a rhythm, and we started to see it late tonight. Hopefully he can build on that. But I think it's going to be a struggle for Derek White all season, to be honest. He's just is not used to having this much pressure on him at all times. And so can you get a couple guys like a Simons, who should be theoretically going up against weaker defenders than he's used to now that he's coming off the bench? And so can he just knock down a couple shots, whether that's from 3 or get into the paint and drive past his defender? As I said, I don't really want him taking that many threes. So, yeah, just something that, I hope can continue or, can be fixed in the next game. To start this game, the Celtics had good ball movement. They had good, playmaking and good floor spacing. It just was that final, finishing off the play, whether that was a 3 or a mid-range or a layup, whatever it is. There was a cap on the basket. And, you're going to have games like that. But, I thought this was going to be the year that, they wouldn't just keep chucking up the threes when something went wrong. I thought they could, with the roster they had, they would find and try new strategies, whether it worked or not. But I guess not. I guess Joe Mazzulla is sticking with his ways. Or maybe he has told everyone to, go into the paint and try new things, and, they just continue to shoot threes, which, at that point, if it's on the players, what are you going to do? You can't really do anything. That's not coaching if your players are not going to listen to them. But I don't think we have that problem on this team. This game is definitely a cause for concern on the coaching part, not just the actual players. But I'm going to wrap it up here. Follow on social media. We will be back after the Wizards game. Another winnable game, but, you never know, I guess, in this league. On any given night, the Celtics could, go 11 for 51 on threes and, lose to a team that, when it's all said and done, might be the worst or second worst team in the league. But I guess, we'll react to that game. And, in between, we'll see if there's news on anything. And we'll react to that if there is. And then this weekend, we'll do another podcast episode. I'm trying to keep the podcast episodes to the weekends. We'll do one, I think every Sunday night is a great time. Unless there's a game Sunday, then we might do it, a Saturday or maybe a Sunday morning. But we'll, do a podcast episode each week on the weekends. So you can check that out on YouTube or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. But once again, the Celtics fall in a just absolute shamble performance from three, or really shooting overall. 105, 103. Keontae George goes off for the Jazz. Jaylen Brown has in terms of sheer numbers, a great game, but the efficiency was just not there. And the Celtics, are now 3-5 on this season, and an uphill battle from here to stay at 500. Until next time, go Celtics.
Brown lets it fly. Bottom, a three. From behind, knocking it away. Tatum cashes in. Richard got it back inside. And one. Brown lets it fly.